Hi, I am Marlene Peralta. Science and You starts now.
I'm Donna Hanover. We've come a long way from robots in science fiction and Hollywood. They're now on staff in the operating room. We're here in the OR to show you how. Coming up on Science and You.
I'm Anne Riddell. Who will be the next Madame Curie? How do young women today feel about science as a future? Today we take a closer look at how women have and continue to revolutionize scientific discovery. That's ahead on Science and You.
I'm Greenberg, and you're looking at Lower Manhattan, one of the world's most beautiful and recognizable skylines, yet it may all end up underwater. That's ahead on Science and You.
I'm Gilliam. For decades, solar power has meant the use of those huge, unsightly solar panels. But that's changing thanks to some innovators and artists. They're enhancing solar power. We'll show you what we mean coming up on Science and You.
Imagine a world with driverless cars or an elevator to space. How about an invisible cloak? I'm Annabelle DeMillo, and the future's ahead on Science and You.
I'm Donna Hanover. This is not a video game. This is a robot that is the cutting edge of modern surgery.
There's a medical revolution underway in operating rooms across the country, and the breakout star of it all is straight out of science fiction. Meet the Da Vinci surgical system that is allowing surgeons to perform complicated procedures with computerized precision. I scrubbed in recently with Dr. Nirav Patel, Director of Cardiac Surgery at Lenox Hill Hospital in Manhattan.
Tell us what you can do with the Da Vinci robot that you can't do as a human being, as a surgeon.
Da Vinci robot helps us do the same operation which a human being does through much smaller incisions. Because as you can see, my hands, they are this big. If I have to get inside the heart with my conventional instruments, then I need a much larger incision.
Using a demonstration mannequin, we could see how robotic scalpel instruments are inserted into a patient. Using a high-definition camera and extreme magnification, surgeons can look closely at the area where the procedure is taking place.
It is in high def, and it is three-dimensional.
What if something went a little differently than you expected it? Can you move away from the Da Vinci surgery in the middle of an operation?
Yes, exactly. It is very simple. As you can see over here, these are the 3 holes we have made in this mannequin to put the instruments. If the operation is not going right, or we think that this patient is not suitable for robotic, we just take these instruments out, roll the cart away, I scrub in and make an incision in a standard way.
Robotic surgery is not automatic surgery, however. The doctor is in personal control at all times. Seated at a panel with foot and wrist controls, he directs the robot's every move.
As soon as I look into it, the robot starts moving.
And procedures underway inside the patient are much more precise. These delicate, flexible instruments operate with an almost infinite dexterity in the smallest of spaces.
I was reading you can do beating heart surgery with this.
Yes.
Explain what that is.
So about 10, 12 years ago, the surgeons realized that maybe we don't have to stop the heart. We can stop the surface of the heart, so the rest of the heart can move, but we can freeze that particular surface of the heart, open the artery, and still continue to do precise suturing. So beating heart surgery for bypass surgery is an established procedure.
The smaller incisions resulting from robotic procedures result in much less bleeding and much shorter recovery time for the patient. I met with Marco Mandel, who underwent a heart bypass via robotics and was out of the hospital in just 5 days.
Marco, you were one of the first, really, to have robotic surgery on your heart. Were you nervous about that?
Absolutely not. And I didn't know that I was the first. If I was the first, maybe I will be a little bit nervous. I am very happy with this robot that they do the surgery. And I hope that each year they will be more sophisticated and more advancing in the progress. I tell you the truth, now it's about 1 month. It's like I didn't pass through a surgery.
It wasn't too long ago that robots were considered child's play. But while they are recasting the medical industry, there remains room for scientific improvement.
This is a technology which has to enhance what we do. It cannot replace what we have been doing for all these years. So again, it has to be used with caution, right procedure for the right patient.
The advance of the science is so, with the progress, is so sophisticated, so good, that they have not to be afraid from it. Absolutely not.
This robot isn't the end of the scalpel, but it definitely gives surgeons an extra set of hands when it counts the most. This is Donna Hanover for Science and You.
I'm Anne Riddell at Girls Prep in Manhattan. Will one of these young women be the next Madame Curie? Today we take a closer look at how women have and continue to revolutionize the world of science. They're only in grade school, but these girls have already learned an invaluable lesson.
Some girls don't think they could do science, but they really can. So you just get to try, and then you get to be a scientist.
Granted, there are a few steps between grade school and biomedical engineering, but the point here is possibility, and that these students believe in it. But does gender continue to play a role? Julie Desjardins of City University's Baruch College says yes, the culture of science is still very masculine. She's the author of the book, The Madame Curie Complex. In her book, Desjardins looks at prominent female scientists throughout history, women who made major contributions, but in some cases got little or no recognition. Another issue Desjardins tackles, the way society historically viewed female scientists. As she explains it, Madame Curie became a larger-than-life figure, but that didn't necessarily help the cause for other women.
It's almost like they can't even be equal to men in science. They have to be the creme de la creme to even compete. Because, of course, Madame Curie was head and shoulders above everybody else.
Obviously, times have changed, but the numbers clearly show men still far outpace women in some scientific fields. Take a look at this breakdown from the National Science Foundation. For science and engineering occupations in 2009, women made up 68.3% of psychologists, 48.9% of biological and life scientists, but just 24.8% of mathematical or computer scientists and 10.7% of engineers. It's an issue Jill Barganetti, professor of biological sciences at Hunter College, understands well. Barganetti's research focuses on cell growth and studying better ways to kill cancer cells. She is a lauded scientist with a long track record of awards and honors. She's also a mom and a woman who has learned to balance home and work in an incredibly demanding field.
You have to juggle, and you have to recognize that you do your best, and you have to figure out and prioritize what you're doing each day, but that your family is important just as your work is important. So you can't completely let go of one for the other.
Barganetti says she chose Hunter in part because it was a welcoming environment, and she wanted to be a role model for other women, particularly women of color.
We've come a long way. So I think, yes, the landscape has definitely changed. But things are definitely more difficult for women. I think it's harder to gain respect of your male peers, and maybe sometimes even female peers. There's a whole old boys network, and it's difficult to smash the glass ceiling.
Like other academic institutions, the City University of New York has taken notice. Distinguished women scientists are breaking boundaries at the City University of New York with pioneering research in fields that are critical to our nation's future. The words of Chancellor Matthew Goldstein, who not only has taken notice, but is taking action, spotlighting and championing female scientists at all CUNY colleges. Part of the challenge is making sure girls don't let gender stereotypes hamper their natural curiosity about science.
There's a question, then we make a hypothesis, then we find out the real answer, and some of our hypotheses be very, very true. So it's very cool, and I just love to ask questions and get to find out the answer.
And Jill Barganetti has this advice for young women about finding their way. Follow what interests you.
Didn't think I was going to be a scientist.
So you're going to be a dancer,
I thought I was going to be a dancer, and I was just following that guide, and now I think about choreography in cells, and I just followed what I was interested in. I kept asking the questions, and I say to all the young girls, follow your guide, don't let people tell you it's not possible.
Despite historical stereotypes, women have proven science is not a boys-only club. And for today's young girls, the future's even brighter as more and more women transform what was once considered a male-dominated field. The lesson for all of us, intelligence, ambition, and hard work don't have a gender. I'm Anne Riddell for Science and You.
In 10 minutes, a hurricane releases more energy than all of the world's nuclear weapons combined.
I'm Greenberg in the middle of a Category 2 hurricane, a virtual one with 100 mile per hour winds at the Liberty Science Center. But scientists say a real hurricane, a strong one, could be a potential recipe for disaster. Professor Nicholas Koch teaches earth and environmental science at Queens College. He's also a world-renowned expert on hurricanes and says New York City is bound to be hit hard.
The frequency is low, but the consequences are extreme.
There are several reasons why a hurricane could wreak havoc on the city. One is simple geography.
This right angle makes the New York area one of the most dangerous places in America for a hurricane to come in based on the generation of flood surge. For a Category 3 hurricane, we get a Category 5 level surge.
Professor Koch shows us artifacts from Hog Island that were washed away when the hurricane of 1893 destroyed the vacation spot that once sat off Far Rockaway.
We know that if something has happened before, it's capable of happening again. If it hasn't happened in a long time, it's going to happen soon.
Koch says consider the damage done by a Category 2 storm nearly 200 years ago. It would only be amplified now.
In 1821, what is the population in New York? Tens of thousands, right? A hurricane Category 2 did tremendous destruction and raised the water level from low tide 13.5 feet in 1 hour. And the Hudson met the East River for 3 hours. Manhattan was 2 islands.
The hurricane's path isn't the only reason for increased storm surge. Sea level here in lower Manhattan is up a foot from a century ago and could rise another 4 to 5 feet in the next 50 years.
You see, a lot of people don't understand when the Weather Channel says that we're going to have a storm surge of 15 feet. There's 30-foot waves on top of that surge. So as you raise the ocean, those waves are going to come in at a higher and higher level and do more and more damage to higher structures.
Gary Conte is on the lookout for hurricanes heading our way. He's the warning coordination meteorologist for the National Weather Service.
New York City typically experiences impacts from a tropical storm about every 5 years and about every 17 years from a hurricane.
Conte says ocean temperatures are rising. The heat serves as the engine that fuels the storms, potentially leading to fiercer and faster hurricanes.
We are in the middle of what we call a multi-decadal cycle where the sea surface temperatures are averaging above normal, and that typically correlates with more hurricanes than normal and more intense hurricanes than normal.
It's like a three-ring circus. Saltwater flooding, freshwater flooding, wind. The time for evacuation is half of what it is in Miami. In Miami, you can sit there, watch the Weather Channel, make a rum drink for 4 days, and then evacuate, right? In New York City, you have 6 hours from Cape Hatteras.
That could spell disaster for popular summer spots like Fire Island, leaving it much like Hog Island, a distant memory.
To a geologist, a barrier island is a very temporary feature. Sea level is rising, and all the houses you see on Fire Island are going to be gone in 100 years.
While levees and seawalls didn't do much to help people in New Orleans when the killer storm Katrina struck, experts agree storm barriers could be beneficial to the Big Apple.
Manhattan is bedrock. Bedrock that's 500 million years old. And it's the toughest rock in the world because 3 times it was squeezed between continental collisions. That's why we can build the height of the buildings we do in Manhattan. So when those walls go on the rock, they're there.
Some building owners in susceptible areas like Lower Manhattan are putting up barriers, but don't expect to see a seawall up anytime soon. One thing's for sure, though, areas that stay dry today may be wet tomorrow. I'm Grant Greenberg for Science and You.
The installation cost of solar-powered systems has fallen almost 30% since 2009, according to the Department of Energy.
I'm Mike Gilliam for Science and You. As solar energy comes more and more to the forefront of our lives, innovators are pushing the envelope to bring us better products. Now, one of those is Sam Cochran. He is one of the inventors of something called Solar Ivy. Sam, what is Solar Ivy?
Solar Ivy is a modular system for deploying solar panels across the surface of our buildings and takes the form of ivy, the plant.
Okay, so this is not your dad's solar panel.
No, it's not. Traditional solar panels are rectilinear and require a bit more to install them on the building, and especially a bit more to install them on a facade. We have a very versatile system that allows for us to have a high level of customization so that each solar panel, while looking like ivy, is optimized for that location, whether it's the building's location or that location of the leaf across the surface of a building.
Show me.
So here we have one of the first working prototypes of Solar Ivy, and each one of these leaves is tuned for a specific angle and rotation given a building's location on the globe and that building's orientation. So let's say you're on the northern hemisphere and you have a south-facing wall. That would be an ideal location for solar. But not every building has that south-facing wall. So if you're southeast or southwest, we can tune Solar Ivy to maximize all of your solar gain for that surface.
Does it work better than the large panels?
It works in the same way that any large panel would, only we have fragmented cells. So while a large rectilinear panel has a higher density of cells, we're taking those cells and spreading them out slightly, allowing us to do that angle and rotation without shading other leaves.
Cochran says the design is efficient, and depending on the technology, they can have many types of thin solar panels incorporated in the Solar Ivy, but be far more flexible than traditional solar panels. Now let's talk about the actual leaves themselves a little bit.
Now this is actually one of the first versions of our new type of leaf. It allows for us to orient the leaves in their angle and also rotate the leaves. And we're able to do that through a proprietary software so that we can look at a building, build all of the surrounding elements that might be shading that building or affecting how much sun hits that building, and have those elements of each leaf respond to that information.
In this rendering, you see a brownstone covered with Solar Ivy, and Cochran says the cells on that facade could power the kitchen free for the whole year. But that does not include the initial investment of about $30,000 to go solar. Cochran says converting from early solar technology to Solar Ivy would be much cheaper.
This actually happens to be a vacation home, so we would actually be pushing the power back into the grid since they weren't going to be using as much of it.
Oh. Selling electricity back to the electric company?
Yes.
I like that.
And they have to give you a check.
Okay. That's great. The folks at Solar Ivy say eventually many of these applications could be adapted to be more mobile and used on things other than fixed buildings. Now, obviously, all of the action in solar is not taking place in Brooklyn. There's a Toronto artist named Sarah Hall, and she's doing some amazing things with something called solar stained glass. What's solar stained glass?
Solar stained glass is where you bring together beauty, color, art, and solar collection.
Have people embraced this?
They have, and it's surprising. My current project is a cathedral, and it's the first cathedral or even church in the world to bring together its stained glass or its art expression and solar energy.
The project is the Holy Family Cathedral in Saskatoon in Vancouver, Canada. Hall has designed and put together 3 large panels assembled in Germany.
Everything about it is a perfect location for solar. They're 37 feet high, 12 feet wide, there's 54 panels. They're all tempered triple pane, thermal panes, their artwork, and their solar collection.
How much solar energy would a project like that actually collect, and how is that all going to work?
I think the easiest way to explain it is that it's about the same amount of energy as 4 or 5 households use in a year.
Can you describe for me the process, how you put these together?
The glass is tempered, which means that it becomes a safety glass. We then embed the solar cell onto my art glass, and all of the cells are wired together. We then bring clear glass on top and laminate it.
The panels are wired together, and the power passes through a conduit into the electrical grid, and the church is paid for that power. The result? The cathedral spends next to nothing on its energy. Sarah Hall has other projects, including Harbourfront on Lake Ontario in Toronto and the Lux Nova Wind Tower in a park at Regent College in Vancouver that is powered by energy captured from the sun. She says she remembers the first night the LED bulbs came on.
I almost cried that time. I really felt overwhelmed to see my work making light.
Both Sarah and Sam Cochran see a lot more solar in both commercial and personal use over the next 10 to 15 years.
I think that the solar industry has been very technically oriented, and I think if they open themselves to imaginative use and more experimental things, this will bring it ahead. Because there's lots of artists who would be interested to bring solar energy collection somehow into their work.
So, we've shown some of the new solar technology, and one thing is certain, people are actively working to make solar a much larger part of our lives. Here's my colleague, Ernabel DeMillo.
Hi, I'm Ernabel DeMillo. Ever wonder what our world will look like in 100 years? Will we be traveling in flying cars? Will we live forever? Well, just ask Michio Kaku. He's a physics professor here at CUNY, and he's author of the best-selling book, Physics of the Future. And his new book takes us on an incredible journey forward.
If we were to meet our great-grandkids of the year 2100, we will think of them as gods.
You heard him right, gods. In the future, Michio Kaku predicts we will have technology that will make us seem like the gods of Greek mythology.
Venus had a perfect body. She also had a timeless body. We will have that as well. And then Apollo rode on a chariot across the sky. We will have flying cars, finally. And then Pegasus was the winged horse. We will be able to have zoos of extinct animals. We'll be able to resurrect animals that have been dead for tens of thousands of years.
This all sounds like a science fiction movie. Hard to believe? Well, just imagine what life was like for our great-great-grandparents.
Think of our ancestors of the year 1900. They were dirt farmers. They only lived to their 40s. If they were to see us today, they would look at us as sorcerers and wizards with rocket ships, satellites, GPS, and all this high-tech wizardry.
In his book, Physics of the Future, Kaku takes readers through the next 100 years, and he makes what may seem like bold predictions. For instance, smartphones will be so 2011.
The internet will be in our contact lens. I will blink, and when I see you, I'll see your biography listed next to you. And if you're speaking to me in Chinese or Urdu, I'll see a translation of that. And who will buy these internet contact lenses? College students taking final examinations.
Kaku also predicts cancers and tumors will soon be just a flush away from a cure.
I've interviewed over 300 of the world's top scientists. And when I interview the doctors, they tell me that your toilet will be the cure for cancer. How is that? Because your toilet will have what are called DNA chips that analyze proteins emitted from 100 cancer cells in a cancer colony 10 years before a tumor forms. The word tumor could disappear from the English language. We will also zap cancer with what are called smart molecules or nanoparticles. These already exist. Every prediction in my book, and I make hundreds of predictions, have a prototype in the laboratory.
And an idea proposed 100 years ago may soon be a reality.
A regular citizen like me could just go on an elevator, press the up button, and it'll take me up to space.
Right. Right now, if you had $20 million, you can hitch a ride on the International Space Station. $20 million. If you have $200,000, you can hitch a ride on Spaceship Two. You go up 70 miles and down 70 miles.
Okay, I have neither.
But what about the average Joe and Jane? How are they going to go into outer space? That's where the space elevator comes in.
So what will keep that elevator from tipping over?
It doesn't fall down because of the centrifugal force of the Earth as it spins. Because right now, you are moving at 1,000 miles an hour because the Earth's circumference is 24,000 miles, and there are 24 hours in a day. So you're moving at 1,000 miles an hour. And so because this line going into outer space is also moving at 1,000 miles per hour, that's why it doesn't fall.
Wow, you know, I got a C in physics. I think if you were my professor, I might have done much better.
I'm Ernabel DeMillo for Science and You.
That's our show for today. Thanks for joining us. I am Marlene Peralta. See you next time on Science and You.